William was holding an envelope in his hands. Collins. He uttered the sender's last name. Who's this? I can't remember. The city of Boston, the return address indicated. The man scratched the back of his head in confusion. Apparently, this woman made a mistake. Boston is thousands of kilometers away from here, and I don't know anyone from Boston. She made a mistake, though. The address is mine, and the receiver's name is mine, too. I think it's some kind of scam. William wanted to throw the envelope away without even opening it, but he was too curious. He lived in a small town where everyone really respected him. 7 months ago, he became a widower. He had lived with his wife Susan for 34 years. They lived happily in a nice spacious house. Sometimes they quarreled, like any other couple, but still they loved each other. The family had a small vegetable garden, and they always had fresh vegetables, berries, and beautiful flowers. William and Susan had raised 2 sons, and they already had grandchildren. The sons and grandchildren often came to visit and support them a lot. During the summer, the grandchildren often stayed at their grandparents' house. Life went on calmly and happily, except that one day, Susan got seriously ill. The sons took their mother to the city for treatment, but despite all efforts, it didn't give any results, and Susan died. William didn't feel embarrassed by crying at the funeral of his beloved wife. How would he live without his dear Susan? His sons tried to persuade William to move to the city, but he refused and decided to stay in his hometown. The man was 57 years old. He always took care of both his physical shape and his appearance. He always wore clean and neat clothes, shaved his face daily, didn't drink alcohol, and had no other bad habits. However, the death of his wife affected him badly. His hair quickly turned gray, and now he had some health problems. He felt very lonely, and the previous coziness at home was completely gone. "William, don't you need a housewife in the house?" a neighbor inquired. "No, I don't need anyone but my Susan," the man said gloomily. He didn't even realize then that the neighbor was offering herself for the role of his housewife. A few months after Susan's death, single women over 40 became noticeably active, trying to attract William's attention. They asked him to help them around the house, make repairs, or bring heavy bags of groceries. One day, while William was drinking tea alone in the kitchen and thinking about his beloved wife, someone knocked on the door. The man thought that someone had come to ask for help once again, and he never refused to help anyone. He opened the door. It was his neighbor Lillian on the doorstep. "William, I won't bore you with a long conversation. I've come to make you a favorable offer. So, you're single, and I'm single too. We should live together. We'll live in your house, and we'll sell my house. I won't need it. I will take care of household matters, cook delicious food, take care of the vegetable garden, wash and iron clothes, and clean the house. So, what do you think?" William was confused and didn't know what to say. He didn't like to say no to people, but this was a different case. "Lillian, how old are you?" he began. "I'm 45. I'm still young, but very lonely," she replied. "That's the problem, Lillian." He took her hand. "You're very young. You'll need love and affection. But I'm no longer capable of that. I guess I've got too old." "William, what has happened to you? You were always a robust man with excellent health." Lillian wondered. "I don't know, Lillian. But please don't tell anyone about my problem. After all, it's a very delicate problem," William said. "Of course, I understand, William. I promise I won't tell anyone." "Lillian, you're the only person I told about it. Please keep my secret." "I feel so sorry for you, William. You're a decent man anyway. I have to go." Lillian immediately rushed to tell her neighbors about William's secret. The ladies were shocked. They stopped inviting him to visit, stopped asking him for help, and William lost his position as the most attractive man for women in their 40s. Actually, this was exactly what William had expected. so he wasn't offended. Why didn't I think of something like this before? He thought with a chuckle. It was winter, so the streets and trees were covered with snow. William made breakfast and then went to the grocery market to get some food. On his way back, he saw an envelope with a letter in his mailbox. William was very surprised because he had not received any letters for a long time. His sons wouldn't send him paper letters. They came to visit him every weekend and could call or text him anytime. William took the letter out of the mailbox and put it in the grocery bag. At home, when he put on his glasses, he could see the sender's name. The last name seemed completely unfamiliar to him. He was about to throw the letter away, but at the last moment, he changed his mind and opened it. "Hello, dear William," the letter began. "I guess you don't recognize my last name, because it's my husband's last name. However, perhaps you remember Amanda Smith." "Of course I do. A beautiful blue-eyed girl." William thought. "I'm sorry to bother you, William. I've heard rumors that your wife is gone. I've been a widow myself for 12 years. My husband was in the military, so we were constantly moving from one city to another. That's how I ended up away from home. I have an adult son who got married last year and now lives in his own house with his wife. I feel very lonely, William. I don't even have anyone to talk to. Do you remember that we dated when we were teenagers?" "Of course I remember, Amanda. I even kissed you once." "You did?" William smiled contentedly, thinking back to his youth. "It happened by the river, under a tree. You kissed me on the cheek, and then you felt embarrassed and ran away." "Why were you embarrassed?" "We went out 3 times, and then you kissed me. I thought about it for a long time and decided to write you a letter. What if things can work out between us now? I will wait for your letter impatiently. Or, come to visit me. You'll find the address on the envelope." William, putting the letter back in the envelope, noticed that there was a picture of a young Amanda looking at him. Amanda was so beautiful. She had both a pretty face and a perfect body. William thought. Not knowing what to do, the man went to his friend for advice. They had been friends since early childhood and trusted each other. "Do you remember Amanda?" he asked his friend. "That blue-eyed beauty?" "Of course. Why do you ask about her?" "Look." William showed his friend the letter and her picture. "She sent me this letter and invited me to visit her in Boston." "What am I supposed to do now?" "I don't even know, William. Do what your heart tells you to do. I can't give you any advice in this situation. You have to make your own decision." Amanda was very beautiful. I guess I could even call her my first love. "What about Susan? Didn't you love her?" "It's different. She's a lifelong love. But Amanda was my first love, you know." "Yes, I understand. When you joined the army, she didn't want to wait for you and broke up with you." "She didn't break up with me. She simply never made a promise to wait for me. I don't judge her, and I don't have any regrets about the way things turned out. I met Susan, and we lived together the whole life. Susan, I miss her so much." William sighed heavily. "So Amanda didn't love you. Otherwise, things would have turned out differently." "Maybe she didn't. Now I don't want to think about the past and judge her. Just look at her. She's so perfect." "Yes, she's beautiful. But William, that was 40 years ago. You don't know what she looks like now." "I really hope she hasn't changed much." "Well, I've made up my mind. I'm going to visit Amanda. If you really want to see her, go. In any case, you have nothing to lose. At least you'll see how people live outside of our town." "But William, what if you decide to stay in Boston? What about your sons and grandchildren? You'll miss them, won't you?" "I don't think about moving anywhere yet. First, I have to meet Amanda and talk to her. After all, we haven't seen each other in 40 years. "You're right. But I don't think Amanda would mind moving here. You can sell her house, build a new house here, and live happily ever after. Our neighbors will be very surprised when I bring Amanda here." "Yeah, I'd like to see their faces when they see Amanda. They'll be gossiping for a long time. By the way, Did you hear what Lillian said about you? Yeah. William smiled contentedly. I made that all up on purpose to get rid of the clingy ladies. Seriously. William, that's genius. His friend laughed. Okay, I've got to go to the city. I want to find out how to get to Boston. I won't say anything to my sons about my plans yet. That's right. William decided to go to Boston by plane. During the flight, he thought back to his youth. He remembered going out with Amanda and how he had met Susan. It was true love between him and Susan. He had courted her in such a beautiful way. But with Amanda, they only kissed, nothing more. William left for Boston on Saturday, and a week later, he was already working down the street in his town. His friend saw William from his window. William, he called out, come in and tell me everything about your trip. William came to his friend, but there was nothing much to tell. He began reluctantly. I went to see my sons and played with my grandsons. The youngest grandson is getting so fidgety. Friend, let's get straight to the point. Did you find Amanda? Did you talk to her? Yes, I did. What's wrong with you today? You look frustrated. I guess the trip didn't go too well. I don't even know what to say. William shrugged. I came to Boston and spent a long time trying to find the address I needed. The city is very big, and I couldn't understand which way to go. I even had to ask the locals for help. Why didn't Amanda want to come to your town? I didn't invite her. William, tell me the truth. Don't talk in riddles. I actually started to tell you the truth, but you interrupted me with your question. Anyway, by late afternoon, I got to Amanda's house. I approached the door, but I got very nervous. That's normal, she's your first love. His friend smiled. You're interrupting me again. Sorry, mate. Keep talking. So I was standing there, but I couldn't raise my hand to knock on the door. You've become so indecisive. You've really gotten old. You weren't like this before. Stop interrupting me. Sorry, William. Go on. I knocked on the door. I even got sweaty out of fear. I heard loud footsteps approaching the door. I even closed my eyes, anticipating to see Amanda. Someone asked, "Who's there?" I said, "I'd like to see Amanda." I heard the sound of the door opening and closed my eyes again. "What do you want?" a gruff voice said. At first, I thought it wasn't Amanda, for she had a very sweet voice years ago. I opened my eyes and saw a huge fat woman who was several times wider than me. "I am Amanda. And who are you? Wait. Are you the new plumber? Why did you come so late? Now you are going to work for half an hour and tell me your workday is over. What the hell? I called the plumber a week ago. Why didn't you come sooner?" She got really hysterical. Do you remember how polite she was to me in her letter? I was standing there, and I couldn't believe it was the same Amanda. After a few minutes, I realized everything and said, "I'm sorry. I guess I got the wrong address. I need another Amanda." I turned around and literally ran as fast as I could. "William, is that you?" she shouted after me. "William, come back. It's me, Amanda. You're at the right address. William." I was so scared. I thought she was going to catch me and drag me into her house, and then I'd never escape from her. His friend listened to the end of the story and started laughing out loud. "What's so funny? You're actually supposed to feel sorry for me. I've never experienced such horror," William said resentfully. I guess no one expected Amanda to change so much by old age. Yes, she was really beautiful when she was young. Except that I didn't like her personality right away. She was always very rude. Anyway, the main thing is that I'm home, and I don't even regret going there. Now I don't have any doubts or questions. "So what are you going to do now?" his friend asked. "You know, I'm definitely not going to look for a fiancé anymore. I'd rather wait for the summer. My sons said they would bring my grandchildren here for the whole summer. So I have no time to despair. Life goes on, friend."
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward.
"Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak.
"There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer."
"Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right." His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email.
Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly.
The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk.
He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale.
"Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam.
My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father.
Well, you could hardly call it being raised.
After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing.
Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school.
Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out.
I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything.
The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke.
Take care. That was our last conversation.
Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment.
Yet, my father never visited me even once.
I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education.
Listen up.
Our work can change the future of our employees.
Don't drag us down.
On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly.
There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle.
At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state.
But that was long ago.
Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose.
I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said?
I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him.
Someone was watching me with a smirk.
In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go.
You are the latter.
It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened.
Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results.
As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty.
Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey.
I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day.
Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today?
Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today.
I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly.
They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job.
Having joined the company wanting to do customer service.
I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look.
To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally,
Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance.
As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick.
If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America.
Nick began the presentations.
Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them.
The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me.
There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer.
He was likely talking about me.
I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently.
Meetings should be for employees only.
Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking.
The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation.
Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self.
I'm leaving.
I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home.
The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk.
In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale.
Nick! What's wrong?
Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick.
And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires.
Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen.
They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday.
Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips.
The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally.
President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles.
Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief.
Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction.
Do you know how much revenue we get from that company?
We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed.
He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important.
You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter.
Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble.
Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation.
Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment.
Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary.
Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too.
I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.